It was a cold, misty evening when the last patron stumbled out of the Rusty Anchor, a weathered pub nestled deep in the heart of nowhere, the kind of place where time seemed to stand still and secrets festered like mold in damp corners. The night, 6 years ago, something happened that would leave an entire town whispering for years to come. A bartender named Clara vanished without a trace. No note, no phone call, no sign of struggle, just empty silence where her laughter once filled the room. And now, after all this time, something has been found in a nearby motel room that might finally answer the questions everyone's been too afraid to ask. Clara wasn't just any bartender. She was the soul of the Rusty Anchor. With her quick wit and warm smile, she had a way of making even the loneliest traveler feel at home. People came from miles around, not just for the cheap beer or greasy fries, but because Clara made them feel seen. She knew their stories, their quirks, their tragedies. Some said she could read people better than anyone else alive. But on that fateful night, it was as if the earth itself swallowed her whole. One moment she was there, wiping down the counter after closing up, and the next, gone. Just like that. The search parties scoured every inch of the surrounding woods, dragging rivers and combing through abandoned buildings. Flyers were plastered across town, promising rewards for information. Locals whispered about foul play, while others clung to hope that maybe she'd run off to start fresh somewhere else. But deep down, nobody believed that. Not really. There was something about the way she disappeared, clean, quiet, almost deliberate, that didn't sit right with anyone. And then, life moved on, or at least, it tried to. The Rusty Anchor stayed open, though it never felt quite the same without her. New bartenders came and went, but none of them stuck around long enough to fill the void Clara left behind. Fast forward 6 years, and you'd think the mystery of Clara's disappearance would have faded into the background, buried under layers of new gossip and old memories. But some mysteries refuse to die, especially when they're tied to places like the Rusty Anchor, a place steeped in history and whispers of things best left unsaid. Locals still talk about how the pub got its name. Back in the early 1900s, sailors used to dock their boats along the riverbank nearby, using the pub as a hideout before vanishing into the night. Over the decades, more than a few patrons walked out those doors and were never heard from again. Coincidence? Maybe, but coincidence doesn't explain what happened last week. Maid cleaning rooms at the Pinecrest Motel, a rundown establishment, barely clinging to existence, stumbled upon something strange. Room 12 hadn't been rented out in months, yet the door was unlocked, and the air inside smelled stale, like no one had disturbed it in years. As she tidied up, she noticed a small wooden box tucked away beneath the bed. It was plain, unremarkable even, except for the initials carved into the lid, C.M. Clara Monroe. Her name sent chills down the maid's spine. When she opened the box, she found items that didn't make sense: a torn photograph, a rusted keychain, a folded piece of paper with writing so faint it was nearly illegible. And then there was the smell, something metallic, sharp, lingering, in the air. Blood? Nobody knows yet. All we do know is that whatever's inside that box, it's connected to Clara. Word spread fast. Within hours, half the town was buzzing with theories. Was this proof that Clara had been held captive? Had she tried to escape and failed? Or was this some cruel prank designed to reopen old wounds? The police reopened the case immediately. Dusting off files yellowed with age, they brought in experts to analyze the contents of the box, hoping for answers. Meanwhile, the townsfolk couldn't stop talking about it. For 6 years, they'd lived with the uncertainty of not knowing what happened to Clara. Now, suddenly there was a glimmer of truth, or at least the promise of it. But truth can be dangerous, especially when it's hiding in the shadows. As news of the discovery rippled outward, old faces began resurfacing. Regulars who hadn't set foot in the Rusty Anchor since Clara disappeared started showing up again, drawn by morbid curiosity or guilt. Some claimed they'd seen her the night she vanished, insisting they remembered details they swore they'd forgotten. Others denied being there altogether, despite evidence to the contrary. Among them was Jake, the pub's owner and Clara's closest friend. He'd always maintained his innocence, but over the years, doubts crept in. Why hadn't he reported her missing sooner? Why did he seem so reluctant to talk about that night? Even now, standing outside the motel room, his hands trembled as he stared at the box like it held all the answers and all the blame. Then there's Sarah, Clara's younger sister, who flew back into town the moment she heard the news. She'd spent years trying to move on, convincing herself that Clara must have chosen to leave. Finding peace wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Now, faced with the possibility that her sister's disappearance was far darker than she imagined, Sarah feels the walls closing in. Every memory, every unanswered question, comes rushing back. She remembers the last time they spoke, a hurried phone call full of apologies and promises to catch up soon. Promises left unkept. If the box holds clues to what really happened, Sarah isn't sure she wants to know. Sometimes ignorance is easier than facing the truth. Back at the Rusty Anchor, the atmosphere is heavier than ever. The bar stools creak under the weight of ghosts, both literal and figurative. Patrons sip their drinks in silence, stealing glances at each other as if waiting for someone to crack. Secrets have a way of surfacing when you least expect them, and this place has more than its fair share. Old-timers mutter about the pub's cursed past, pointing to Clara's disappearance as another chapter in its dark history. Younger folks dismiss it as superstition, but even they can't deny the unease hanging thick in the air. Whatever's coming, it's clear that the Rusty Anchor sits at the center of it all. Meanwhile, investigators are piecing together fragments of the puzzle. The torn photograph depicts Clara standing beside a man whose face is partially ripped away. Who is he? The rusted keychain bears the logo of a company long defunct, its significance unclear. And the note written in shaky handwriting. The words are cryptic. They'll find me here. Here meaning what? The motel, the pub, somewhere else entirely. Each clue raises more questions than it answers, pulling the investigation deeper into a labyrinth of lies and half-truths. And yet, amidst all the chaos, one thing remains certain: Clara's story isn't over. Whether she's alive or dead, whether she chose to leave or was taken against her will, her presence lingers in every corner of this town. The Rusty Anchor feels it most acutely. Its walls seem to breathe with her absence, holding on to secrets they refuse to release. As the days pass and the investigation unfolds, tensions rise, friendships fray, trust erodes. Because whoever took Clara or whatever happened to her didn't act alone. Someone knows something. Someone always does. But as the sun sets over the horizon, casting long shadows across the empty streets, the question remains: are we ready for the truth? What happens when the pieces finally fall into place, revealing a picture uglier than anyone imagined? For now, the box sits in the hands of authorities, its contents scrutinized and debated. Yet the real answers may lie closer than anyone realizes, in the hearts of those who loved Clara most, and in the dark corners of a town that refuses to let go of its secrets, just as the first hints of resolution begin to emerge. Another twist threatens to unravel everything. Late one night, a figure slips unnoticed into room 12 at the Pinecrest Motel. By morning, the box is gone, leaving behind only a single word scrawled on the wall in red paint. Wait. Wait for what? For Clara? For justice? Or for something far worse? As the camera pans out, capturing the desolate stretch of road leading away from the motel, the screen fades to black. The mystery deepens, and the wait begins anew. Here's an extended version of the section with additional lines to deepen the narrative, add more emotional weight, and provide richer descriptions. The additions are seamlessly woven into the existing text while maintaining the natural flow. The town of Pinecrest wasn't always the kind of place where mysteries festered unchecked. Once upon a time, it was just another sleepy little community tucked away in the hills, known for its quiet charm and the steady hum of life moving forward without much fuss. But that all changed when the Rusty Anchor became more than just a watering hole. It turned into a magnet for drifters, dreamers, and those looking to escape their pasts. Clara Monroe fit none of those categories. She was as grounded as they came, her roots planted firmly in the soil of this town, even if she'd spent years yearning to leave. Yet somehow her presence at the pub felt like destiny. It was almost poetic, really, how someone so alive could vanish so completely, leaving behind only whispers and unanswered questions. Jake had hired Clara on a whim 5 years before she disappeared. At the time, he'd been desperate. Regular bartenders were hard to come by, especially ones willing to stick around long enough to learn the quirks of the locals. Clara walked in one rainy afternoon, drenched but smiling, asking if he needed help behind the bar. He didn't think twice about saying yes. From day one, she brought something intangible to the pub: a warmth, a spark that made people want to stay longer, talk louder, laugh harder. Jake often joked that she kept the place afloat, both literally and figuratively. What he never admitted, not even to himself, was how much he relied on her steadiness. When she vanished, it wasn't just the patrons who felt the loss. Jake did too, though he buried his grief under layers of work and whiskey. Nights stretched into lonely hours as he replayed memories of her laughter, her teasing banter, the way she seemed to know exactly what everyone needed before they even asked. Sarah, Clara's younger sister, saw things differently. Wasn't just the heart of the Rusty Anchor, she was family. Growing up, Sarah idolized her big sister, clinging to her like a lifeline through their parents' messy divorce and the endless shuffle between homes. Clara had promised her once, during one of their rare heart-to-hearts, that she'd never leave. "You're stuck with me," she'd said with a grin, ruffling Sarah's hair. That promise haunted Sarah now. For years, she clung to the idea that Clara must have chosen to go somewhere better, somewhere far from the monotony of Pinecrest. But deep down, doubt gnawed at her. If Clara had left willingly, why hadn't she reached out? Why hadn't anyone seen her since? The void Clara left behind was vast, swallowing Sarah whole some days. She'd wake up reaching for her phone, half expecting a missed call or text from her sister, only to remember the cruel truth. Clara was gone. As investigators dug deeper into Clara's disappearance, cracks began to form in the foundation of what everyone thought they knew. The torn photograph found in the box showed Clara standing next to a man whose face was partially ripped away. Through painstaking analysis, authorities identified him as Tom Grayson, a drifter who'd passed through town months before Clara vanished. Witnesses placed him at the Rusty Anchor several times, though no one remembered him well enough to describe him clearly. Tom had a reputation for keeping to himself, paying cash for drinks, and disappearing as quickly as he arrived. His name sent shivers down spines when it surfaced again 6 years later. Was he involved? Or was his inclusion in the photo merely coincidence? Either way, his reappearance cast a shadow over the investigation, raising more questions than answers. Then there was the rusted keychain bearing the logo of Crestwood Industries, a company that went bankrupt decades ago after a series of scandals involving illegal dumping near Pinecrest's riverbanks. Locals still whispered about the toxic waste buried beneath the surface, blaming it for everything from crop failures to unexplained illnesses. The discovery of the keychain raised eyebrows. Did it belong to Clara? Had she stumbled onto something dangerous while exploring the abandoned factory site? Or was it planted there deliberately, meant to mislead? Each new clue seemed to pull the case in a different direction, spinning the town into a web of uncertainty. While the investigation unfolded, tensions simmered among the townsfolk. Old alliances crumbled, replaced by suspicion and paranoia. Regulars at the Rusty Anchor stopped meeting each other's eyes, afraid of what they might see reflected back. Some pointed fingers at Jake, accusing him of knowing more than he let on. After all, he'd been the last person to see Clara alive, or so he claimed. Others blamed themselves, replaying memories of that final night over and over, searching for clues they might have missed. Even Sarah found herself questioning her own recollections. Had Clara seemed distracted in those final weeks? Was there a shadow behind her smile that Sarah failed to notice? Guilt gnawed at her, sharp and relentless. What kind of sister misses the signs? Amidst the chaos, a subplot emerged involving Emily Carter, a waitress at the pub who'd been working the closing shift the night Clara disappeared. Emily had always been tight-lipped about what happened, insisting she'd gone home early and heard nothing unusual. But lately she'd started acting strangely, jumping at loud noises, avoiding eye contact, skipping shifts altogether. When pressed, she broke down, confessing that she'd lied. She hadn't left early. In fact, she'd seen Clara arguing with someone outside the pub shortly before closing time. The figure had been too far away to identify, cloaked in shadows, but Emily swore she recognized the voice. It belonged to a man, low and urgent, though she couldn't remember the words exchanged. Terrified of getting involved, she'd kept quiet, carrying the guilt ever since. Now, unable to bear the weight of her secret any longer, she offered to cooperate fully with the investigation, hoping to make amends. Meanwhile, the note found in the box, "They'll find me here," continued to haunt everyone. Investigators debated its meaning endlessly. Was it a plea for help, a warning, or something else entirely? The red paint message left in room 12 only added fuel to the fire. Who had broken in, and why? And what did wait mean? The uncertainty weighed heavily on the town, turning neighbors into strangers and friends into suspects. Every new detail unearthed seemed to complicate matters further, twisting the narrative into knots nobody could untangle. Rumors spread faster than wildfire, consuming the town in a haze of fear and distrust. Doors that were once left unlocked now had deadbolts installed. Streets that were once bustling with activity emptied by sundown. Pinecrest had become a place where no one felt safe anymore. As the days stretched into weeks, the pressure mounted. Jake began spending nights at the pub, unable to sleep in his empty house. He pored over old receipts, security footage, what little existed, and employee schedules. hoping to find anything that might shed light on Clara's fate. Sleep eluded him, his mind racing with possibilities. Had he missed something obvious? Could he have done more to protect her? Each unanswered question felt like a punch to the gut, leaving him hollow and restless. Meanwhile, Sarah threw herself into researching Crestwood Industries, convinced the keychain held the key to understanding what happened. Her late-night searches uncovered disturbing reports of contamination and cover-ups, leading her to wonder if Clara had uncovered something sinister. She scoured old news articles, court documents, and environmental studies, piecing together fragments of a story that seemed too dangerous to touch. The deeper she dug, the clearer it became that someone had gone to great lengths to keep these secrets buried, and Clara had paid the price. Meanwhile, Emily wrestled with her conscience, torn between fear and the need to do the right thing. She replayed that night over and over in her head, the argument she'd witnessed, the urgency in the man's voice, Clara's determined expression as she stood her ground. Had she unknowingly been a witness to the beginning of something terrible? The guilt was suffocating, pressing down on her chest until she could barely breathe. Finally, she decided to come clean, knowing it might cost her everything, but unable to live with the lies anymore. The climax approached like a storm brewing on the horizon, dark clouds gathering overhead. One evening, Sarah received an anonymous tip. A local fisherman claimed to have spotted a woman matching Clara's description near the old factory site shortly after her disappearance. Desperate for answers, Sarah drove there alone, flashlight in hand, navigating the crumbling ruins with trembling steps. Each step echoed ominously, amplifying her dread. Inside, she found remnants of makeshift campsites, scattered blankets, empty cans, scraps of clothing. Among them, she discovered a journal. Its pages were filled with frantic scribbles, detailing days spent hiding, watching, waiting. The handwriting wasn't Clara's, but the entries described her vividly, referring to her as the girl who knows. Whoever wrote the journal had been watching Clara closely, chronicling her every move. Before Sarah could process what she'd found, headlights pierced the darkness outside. A car screeched to a halt, doors slamming shut. Footsteps echoed closer, heavy and deliberate. Panicked, Sarah hid behind a pile of debris, clutching the journal to her chest. As voices drifted nearer, she realized she recognized one of them. It was Jake. Sure, here's an extended version of the section with additional lines to deepen the narrative, add more emotional weight, and provide richer descriptions. The additions are seamlessly woven into the existing text while maintaining the natural flow. The silence outside the factory was deafening, broken only by the distant hum of cicadas and the occasional creak of rusted metal swaying in the wind. Sarah's breath hitched as she pressed herself further into the shadows, her fingers trembling around the edges of the journal. The voices grew louder, clearer now, Jake's steady tone mingling with another voice that sent a jolt of recognition through her. It was Tom Grayson, the drifter from the photograph. Her stomach churned. What was he doing here? And why was Jake with him? You said it'd be over by now, Tom hissed, his words clipped and angry. 6 years, Jake. 6 years of running scared because of one mistake. Jake's response came out strained, almost pleading. It wasn't supposed to go this far. She saw too much. We didn't have a choice. Sarah's heart sank like a stone. Saw too much. What had Clara seen? Her mind raced back to the journal, clutched in her hands the frantic scribbles about hiding, watching, waiting. Had Clara uncovered something tied to Crestwood Industries? Something so dangerous it cost her freedom, or worse? Each word on those brittle pages seemed heavier now, weighted with meaning. Was this why someone had gone to such lengths to erase her sister from their lives? Before she could piece it together, footsteps echoed closer to her hiding spot. Panic surged through her veins. If they found her, she wouldn't make it out alive. Summoning every ounce of courage, she slipped deeper into the labyrinth of debris, clutching the journal tightly. The voices trailed behind her, growing fainter but no less menacing. Every step felt like walking on thin ice, the floorboards groaning beneath her weight as though daring to betray her presence. As she navigated the ruins, Sarah stumbled upon an old storage room tucked away in the corner. Its door hung slightly ajar, revealing dim light spilling from within. Against her better judgment, she pushed it open further, stepping inside. What she saw stopped her cold. There, seated at a rickety table illuminated by a single flickering bulb, was Clara. Her sister looked thinner, paler, her once vibrant eyes clouded with exhaustion. Her hair, usually so neatly styled, hung limp and tangled around her face, but it was unmistakably her, alive for a moment. Sarah forgot how to breathe. Then Clara glanced up, shock registering on her face, before being replaced by raw relief. Tears welled in her eyes as she stared at Sarah, disbelief warring with gratitude. "Sarah," Clara whispered hoarsely, rising unsteadily to her feet, her voice cracked under the weight of emotion. "Oh my God, you shouldn't be here." Tears blurred Sarah's vision as she rushed forward, pulling Clara into a tight embrace. She held on as if afraid Clara might vanish again if she let go. "I thought you were dead," she choked out, her voice breaking. "What happened? What? Are you here?" Clara pulled back, her expression grim. "It's complicated. I found out about Crestwood. They've been dumping chemicals again, poisoning the river. I tried to report it, but..." She hesitated, glancing toward the door. Shadows danced across her face, making her look even more fragile. "They caught me before I could get the evidence out. Tom and some others, they've been keeping me here, using me as leverage to keep everyone quiet." Sarah's blood ran cold. "Leverage against who?" "Against anyone who asks questions," Clara replied bitterly. "Including Jake. He's not innocent. Sarah, none of them are. They're terrified of what'll happen if the truth gets out." Her voice dropped to a whisper, barely audible over the hum of the flickering bulb. "They've been covering this up for years. People have died because of it." Before Sarah could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps froze them both. Someone was coming. Without hesitation, Clara grabbed Sarah's hand, dragging her toward a hidden passageway at the back of the room. "We don't have time to explain. Follow me." Heart pounding, Sarah obeyed, following Clara through narrow tunnels carved into the earth. The air grew colder, damper, until finally, they emerged near the riverbank under the cover of darkness. Gasping for breath, Sarah turned to Clara, desperate for answers. "What do we do now?" Clara's jaw tightened, resolve hardening in her tired eyes. "We expose them. All of them. But we need proof first." She paused, looking down at the journal still clutched in Sarah's hands. "That might be our only chance." Back at the rusty anchor, Jake paced nervously behind the bar, his guilt eating away at him. His reflection in the cracked mirror above the liquor shelves looked gaunt, haunted. He poured himself a drink, then another, trying to drown the memories, clawing at the edges of his mind. When Sarah returned hours later with Clara and Topher, look on his face said it all. He knew the game was up. As Clara laid out everything she'd endured, Jake crumbled, confessing his role in covering up Crestwood's crimes. It had started small. He claimed a bribe here, a threat there, but spiraled out of control when Clara stumbled onto their operation. "I never wanted any of this," Jake muttered, his voice trembling. "I thought I was protecting the town. Protecting us. But now," he buried his face in his hands, unable to meet Clara's accusing gaze. "Now I see what I've done. What we've all done." With Clara's testimony and the journal detailing, the conspiracy authorities moved swiftly. Crestwood's illegal activities were exposed, leading to arrests and investigations that rocked Pinecrest to its core. Tom Grayson fled town but was apprehended weeks later, his involvement unraveling the rest of the web. Old secrets tumbled out like dominoes, implicating people no one would have suspected. Even Emily Carter, who had carried her own guilt for 6 years, stepped forward to testify. Her confession brought a sense of closure not just to herself, but to the entire town. In the aftermath, life slowly began to return to normal law, as close to normal as it could be. The rusty anchor reopened, under new management, its dark history serving as both a warning and a reminder of resilience. Jake disappeared, unable to face the weight of his choices. Some said he left town, others whispered he'd taken his own life, consumed by regret. Emily Carter, however, found redemption by testifying against those involved, reclaiming her sense of self-worth. For the first time in years, she smiled without flinching, as though shedding a burden she'd carried for far too long. For Clara and Sarah, healing took time. Rebuilding trust wasn't easy, but the bond they shared proved stronger than anything thrown their way. Together they vowed to honor the lessons learned, that secrets left unchecked can destroy lives. But truth, even painful truth, has the power to set people free. They spent countless nights poring over the journal, piecing together the fragments of Clara's captivity, ensuring nothing was forgotten or overlooked. It became a symbol of survival, a testament to the strength it took to fight back against impossible odds. As the camera pans across Pinecrest one last time, capturing the golden glow of sunrise over the river, the screen fades to black. The final message lingers long after the credits roll. Sometimes the hardest truths are the ones worth fighting for. And in Pinecrest, where shadows once loomed large, the dawn brought hope, not just for Clara and Sarah, but for everyone brave enough to seek justice and confront the past. This expanded version adds depth to character emotions, enriches the setting, and provides more context for the resolution, making the climax and conclusion feel fuller and more impactful.